So in this module, we're going to think about the qualities that a teacher needs, who you teach, and how long we should spend learning how to teach. So this is called a Training the Trainers course. This isn't about teaching you how to do a skill, but teaching you how to teach someone to do a skill. So what I'm going to do in this module, you'll find that in the SurveyMonkey, you'll be asked to tick boxes and reflect on who you teach. Do you teach medical students? Do you teach people from other disciplines, such as surgical care practitioners, or other people who might work in theatre to operate? Do you teach new surgeons? I've learnt today, as you'll see from this video, that in the airline industry they call new surgeons learning from scratch ab initio. So do you teach a registrar who might never have done an operation before how to do an operation? Or perhaps you teach surgeons who are already established surgeons who are wanting to learn new skills. Or perhaps surgeons who already have those skills but want to refine them. So you'll be asked to complete this in the SurveyMonkey, we're going to collate that data. Hopefully you'll give us permission to do that. Then I'm going to ask you to reflect on the qualities that make a good teacher. Is someone who shouts at their trainee a good teacher, or is it someone who's patient? Is it someone who knows how to articulate the subject, or do you need to be able to articulate the subject and actually know the subject? We'll talk a bit about that in Module 3 as well, when we look at different levels of competence. And then we're going to look at how much training we have to be trainers. So many of us would have spent 6 years at medical school, or however long it takes in your country. You may have had a couple of years pre-registration. You may well have then spent another 5 to 10 years learning to be a specialist. And having had 20 years training, does that make you a good teacher? Or is it only then that you have to understand that? So this is what we're going to go through in this module for reflection. And I think to start with, I'm just going to go to a few other people and see what they think about these subjects. So I've spoken to a number of people. I've spoken to Marielle Noddenhuis, my colleague, an excellent teacher, who is a proctor in robotic surgery and has been very much involved with helping me in this Training the Trainers course for in many aspects. And we'll see what she feels makes a good teacher, what she's had in terms of training. I'm then going to go to my friend who I was at school with, Captain Mark Hamway. Captain Mark Hamway is a airline pilot. He flies 747s across the Atlantic for Virgin Atlantic. He's about to come to retirement. They retire quite early in the airline industry. I'm grateful they don't do that to surgeons. But I'm going to see what he has to do to teach his trainees in the airline industry. And finally, I'm going to come to my daughter, who is currently training to be a primary school teacher. And I want to see what she has to learn in her current course, which is coming to the end of in the next few months, in order to be able to teach sort of 10-year-olds at school, and to see if we can see any similarities or any stark differences between the amount of training that each profession gets in order to teach other people. So we're going to look at that and we'll take it from there. So first of all, I'm going to go to Marielle, and I was able to interview her in theatre the other day. So Marielle, thanks for your time. I just want to ask you a couple of questions, if that's all right. Really, just so we can compare it with people in other professions. So, first of all, do you teach people how to operate?
Yeah, I teach subspec fellows robotic surgery.
And okay, subspec fellows, but do you teach any consultants or people more junior than subspec fellows?
Yes, I teach actually junior doctors doing the docking and first assistant, and I'm a proctor for colleagues, and I teach them how to use the robot.
Okay, so in summary, you're regularly teaching, and not only are you regularly teaching, you're actually signing people off at the end of a day to say that they can do this type of surgery.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, well, thank you for doing that. What do you feel are the qualities that make a good teacher?
I think you need to be able to transfer the knowledge in a simple way to your trainees. Have the patience and take the time in order to let them, go through their learning curve.
So it's interesting, you said a few things there. First of all, you talked about patience, not being angry. You talked about having the knowledge and imparting it, so you have to have knowledge at the onset. Do you feel that the technique of imparting it is important?
Yeah, it is, and that's why we have devices and educational programs to help us.
Okay, so we've ascertained that you're regularly teaching, and you're teaching at a variety of levels. You've given the sort of qualities you think are there for being a good teacher and the ones you aspire to. Well, what training have you had? Now, I know you've been on a training the trainers course because I went on one with you. But prior to that, what training did you have that specifically told you how to teach?
I think the last 5 years, maybe half a day, educational training.
So you've been on an educational supervisor's course.
Yeah.
And that's the only education you've had on how to teach people.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Good. Okay, so we're going to perhaps try and come across some people in other specialties now, or at least other disciplines. But person who's teaching high-tech surgery understands the values that are required to be a good teacher, but has had half a day's training in 5 years. So, slight edit, taking my jacket off. Now we're going to go and speak to Captain Mark Hamwee, who's my friend from school, probably my oldest friend. I've known him since he's 7. And I'm very interested to hear what he has to say about training in the airline industry. Look, Mark, thanks for giving me a time.
No problem at all.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to sort of demonstrate what the differences are in teaching people how to teach in different industries. I'm going to put a little caption underneath here that says that you're an airline pilot. I just wondered if you could tell me what who you teach to fly as a senior airline pilot.
So I don't actually teach airline pilots. I teach ab initio students, and they are people with limited or no experience flying. So it would be at the very basic entry of flying to gain a private pilot's license. I also teach people human factors and CRM, which is cockpit resource management, which deals with the implications of communication and fatigue and psychological aspects of aviation.
Gosh, okay, so that sounds like you're teaching people to quite a high level. In fact, the people who are going to end up flying passengers might have gone through some kind of training with you at some point.
Well, that's correct. That's the beginning of their career. Once they're in the airline, of course, it's modular, and I'm sure it's the same in your industry. There's different aspects and different hurdles that you need to achieve. So once you've done your PPL, you then go on to do certain ratings, and then once you're within an airline, and even I have to do that, you would be taught how to fly a specific aircraft, and it may well be a 3-month course, and that continues for each different type rating that you need to attain when you're flying a particular commercial airliner.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. I mean, in your opinion, because I've already interviewed a colleague of mine who teaches surgery, and I'm going to try and, if I can persuade my daughter to come and talk to us as well. In your opinion, what qualities do you need to be a good teacher, to teach someone a skill?
Well, I think first and foremost, when I went on a teacher training course, when initially I was teaching human factors and basic flying, and teaching other people to teach those skills, one of the most relevant parts was that it's not actually your knowledge that is a primary importance in the teaching. Is how you impart knowledge. Obviously you need a basic understanding, you need to have knowledge, but you don't want to be superior with your knowledge. It's actually more to do with communication and a totally different set of skills than just acquiring loads of knowledge.
So knowledge is obviously important, and we're going to talk about competence in this course. When we talked a bit about this over phone, you talked a bit about hierarchy and making your student feel confident, with you. Do you want to expand a little bit on that? Well,
I think, that probably goes back to everything we do in teaching emanates from a circle. And in that center of that circle is communication. Once that communication channel is broken, it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have or what you do or what you say, that person, you've lost that person as a student. And it could be, the deficit could be if you're perhaps, you're perceived, you may not even be an arrogant person or a superior, but if you're perceived as that, that superiority, it does close down that channel of communication.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks a lot. Look, Mark, finally, I'd just like to ask you, just so I can get a sort of gauge on it, because you clearly spend a lot of time teaching other pilots, or have done in the past. What kind of training do you have, or have you had, or do other pilots have, to teach you actually how to teach? I mean, you clearly know your subject, but have you learned any ways to impart that to anyone else, either on courses or on training programs or something like that?
Ironically, teaching other teachers is a longer course than learning how to teach students. So it's a totally different set of skills, because you are given you're given the remit to allow people to teach people who are going to end up flying aircraft. So it's even more responsible job in some respects than actually teaching the students. So for example, we may go on a course to teach people to become a TRE or IRE, which is an examiner or instructor, and that may be 2 months. But to learn how to teach those training examiners and give them that remit, as I said, maybe double the length of that time with the Civil Aviation Authority. So actually teaching the teachers is even more arduous than teaching the students in terms of the qualifications.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm sure a few surgeons will have a wry smile when they hear that, because we get absolutely nothing. In terms of teaching your ab initio students, have you been on a course for or do you just? Yes,
you have to go on a course, of course, to understand that how to teach again, and back to the very basics about listening, explaining, demonstrating, critique, etc., and sort of learning those skills that perhaps we all think we can teach anybody to drive a car, or to cook a dish, but actually there is a certain skill in imparting the information to someone.
Well, Mark, thanks a lot. It's very interesting to see how pilots teach sort of high stakes skills to other pilots. And I think maybe a lot of us in surgery will feel that we've got a lot to learn from you. So thanks a lot, Mark.
A pleasure, Tom. Thank you very much.
So now I'm going to zoom in with my daughter and we'll see what she has to say about how she's being trained how to teach 10-year-olds. I'm just keen to know, darling. So you're training to be a primary school teacher, is that right?
Yes.
And what is required? What do you have to do if you, assuming you've got a university degree? What do you have to do to become a primary school teacher?
I mean, there's lots of different ways. The way that I'm becoming a primary school teacher is I'm doing a PGCE, which is a year-long course with essays and placements, where I learn to be a primary school teacher.
And that's full-time, is it?
Yes, full-time.
And when you get your qualification, you can start working as a primary school teacher, is that right?
Yes.
But you have to do 2 years, what you said something called ECT, what does that stand for?
So you do 2 years as an early career teacher, which you have to pass those 2 years.
So if you're not any good, you get booted out, basically.
It's pretty hard to fail.
Yeah, okay, well, I hope so. So, Emily, I mean, once you've got your qualification and you've done your sort of 2 years early career development, and let's say you've passed, do you then have continuing education through your whole career as a teacher?
Yes, most schools do weekly professional development sessions, so you're constantly developing your skills and learning new things. Also, education is always changing, so you always have to keep up with the newest research and try and implement that in the classroom.
So to summarise, once you've got your degree and you can then do a PGCE, but it's a full-time year-long course. You then do 2 years as a teacher where you have to be signed off at the end to maintain your role as a teacher. And then for the whole of your career, you're having continued development pretty well every week.
Yes. But there are more than one way to become a teacher. So I'm doing a PGCE, which is a year-long course. You can also do what's called a SCIT, which is a school-centred course, which is where you spend a whole year in a school learning about how to be a teacher. Or, yeah, there are lots of different ways as well.
And there's teach, train first or something, or teach first or something like that.
Yeah, teach first, which is where you spend 2 years in a school learning to be a teacher.
Okay, well, look, thank you very much, Emily. I'll let my colleagues know what you have to do to teach children aged 9 to 11 or whatever it is. Thank you, darling. Love you lots.
Bye.
So that's very interesting. Marielle, I know, has been on a Training the Trainers course because I organised one with her, which we attended, and it was run by the LAPCO people, and I've acknowledged them already, but I'm going to acknowledge Tom Cecil and Mark Coleman from LAPCO, who came to the Marsden to help us learn how to teach, and we take teaching very seriously at the Marsden, which is why we did that, and we had other people from around London and the rest of England attend, as well as the then President of SERGS, Rainer Kimmig. I might be flashing up a picture at this time if I can find one. But it was a very entertaining but also educational time, and I must stress strongly that this course does not replace a full 2 days Training the Trainers practical course. If you can get on one organised by LAPCO, I would thoroughly recommend it. But other than that, really, other than a few Training the Trainers courses organised for her via industry, there was no institutional Training the Trainers course for her, just educational supervision educational supervisors course, which is a half-day course run over 3 hours. I've been on that, but I'm not entirely sure it's particularly useful. It tells you how to behave, tells you it tells you how you're supposed to supervise people in a fair and equitable way, but it doesn't actually help you teach. Then we have my airline pilot friend, Mark Hamway, and he has considerably more than that. He regularly gets updates. He's been on a 5-day course, but if you're one of the trainers who also assess, you've got to spend quite a few months teaching people different levels such as instruments and night ratings. So he's had considerably more training on how to teach people how to fly an aeroplane, I'm relieved to hear. But undoubtedly the winner was my daughter, who's currently studying at Cambridge to be a teacher, a primary school teacher, and she's already got a degree, and this is in addition to her degree, but which means she can do a 1-year course called a PGCE, Postgraduate Certificate in Education. It's a full-time year-long course. When she's completed, she spends 2 years, in effect pre-registration, before she can be signed off as a properly qualified teacher, and throughout her life as a teacher she gets continuing education. So it seems like teaching a 10-year-old at school has considerably more standards to it than perhaps teaching someone how to do a high-stakes operation where someone might die or someone might receive severe complications. So I'm hoping that you'll reflect on that, and there are some more questions to ask about what you feel the qualities of a teacher are, and for you to reflect on who you are actually teaching.